We just had a very, very interesting conversation around the ideologies of vertical scaling and horizontal scaling as an OnlyFans agency. So in simple terms, evaluating, should I take on loads of creators or should I just spend all day every day focusing on growing one or two? So we had a little discussion here in the office about that. It was caught on camera because we were shooting some other content. And actually, I think it's a very valuable video and one that you could learn if you're considering where to put your time. So we'll play the video, let you watch the discussion, let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Chad, you know how you always say that you want to vertically scale all of these creators?
Yeah.
I just think we're wasting our time. I just think we need to take on as many creators as possible.
I think doing that in the beginning when we did was the best thing to do at the time, because you need business in. Where we are now, years down the line, I think we have to be more concise and conservative with the creators that we offer the service to, not only for the sake of the quality of the service, but also to ensure that we are able to continue improving our brand image. I think that's really, as a business, it's going to be here for a while.
Okay, but let's say that we stopped recruiting creators because you wanted to concentrate on the ones that we've currently got.
Yeah.
What happens if we miss the next big creator that could have made 500k?
Or to support that, what happens if you end up putting your time into someone that you think's marketable, but then doesn't actually do what we need, or stalls and then it doesn't deliver in the way you perceived, and then we're now at a point where we've got a myriad of creators that we think are marketable but aren't working?
Yeah, definitely. But also, if we take on every ounce of business that we can get, we could be spinning plates forever and never have the dedicated resource to actually know for sure whether someone is marketable or not.
But what happens if every creator we take on, even if they're a small creator and you don't think they're that marketable, we could still improve the chatting ratios, which we typically do with the chatting service.
Yeah.
Give them a good service on that side of things. Try and figure out the marketing off the basis that they're not that marketable, and that extra income and revenue can support more staff members. That's going to alleviate more pressure from both marketing, chatting, and any other departments of the business.
I think you said it quite well, because if you've got the chatting service at a point where it's basically offering an ROI for everybody every time, which at this moment in time it is. So we can just grow that side of the business infinitely. There's nothing wrong with that. I think where we've got to be very selective is who are we actively assigning accounts for on the marketing side? Who are we actively putting time into discussing branding and marketing with? Because ultimately that takes longer than we think, right? To actually nail that and then follow through with it. So I think the issue is going to be, who do we dedicate the marketing team's time to? And I think at the moment we can end up going back and forth on, like, do we sign this one? Do we not? I think Cam's point around taking on all of the business is the right way to do things. And then just being very selective on who we actually continue to follow through with from a marketing standpoint.
I think it needs to change daily. Like, every day you should be assessing, is this creator putting in
She's
effort?
actually grafting.
Yeah, like, is she matching the energy? Is she not matching the energy? Okay, yes, she is. Okay, great. We're going to keep the resources in place. If they're not, okay, where else can we put that? Have we got new creators that have come on board recently that at least deserve a bit of effort, even if we don't think from front facing that they actually got potential? I just think business in, money in should be the forefront of every operation. I think me and Liam, when we first started, one of the phrases we used to say all the time was, what's the most important thing about business?
And the answer is money in.
Money in. But then we get distracted by several other different reasons as to what's important in business: reputation, brand, all these different things. But you just don't want to. I just don't think we need to stop focusing on what is the most important thing about business. And ultimately, most people go into business to make money and to also provide value. So we just have to find a balance.
I would never argue for just strictly vertical scaling anyway, because that in itself has just as many flaws as completely scaling horizontally. But in the event that we onboard a creator for the full services, chatting, marketing, account management, everything, they do really well to begin with. We've seen this a few times. And then things go well, the account starts to pick up, it moves in the right direction, but then the creator themselves then fall off with the consistency of providing the content, something happens with their family, they've got personal issues, whatever it might be, then what will happen off the back of that is the account will start to decline. And we are then in a position where we can't force the account to continue growing because we don't have the content provided, we don't have the traffic in. We're providing a full service, but they're not getting the results, which in their mind, as much as we understand the ins and outs of why that might be, for them it is then a case of, well, they're clearly providing a shit service because my account's decreasing, it was here, now it's lower than it was. That for me is difficult because you can't foresee that ahead of time. You can't say, okay, this creator is going to be consistent for 2 months and then they're going to fall off. So it's always a risk.
Well,
every time you onboard a new creator, you're adding more and more risk.
This is why I always come back to when we speak to all these different agencies on the phone, when we onboard them for the chatting service, and we say, how many creators you got? And they go, oh no, I'm just focused on the one because I'm trying to master the marketing and get it to a point where then I can implement that same cookie cutter approach on other creators. And it's like, well, that doesn't work. We need to learn from other agencies' mistakes, and we never ever were set up like that. And I just don't want to get to a point where we're just trying to vertically scale.
I don't think we're ever going to be at that point because we've got a myriad of creators that are doing fucking $500,000, right? So that in itself is peak vertical scaling. It's virtually impossible to scale your typical creators past $500,000 unless they're basically mega famous. And we've got over 100 creators. So we're also very horizontally scaled. So I don't think we're ever going to run into the issue, if we're being real, about like, are we actually too vertically or horizontally scaled? Because I think things would have to change.
Yeah, I just think that
tremendously
sometimes
for
we
us
slow
to actually
down.
be in that problem. So I don't think we're ever going to get to that. It's just a case of understanding where to allocate resource moving forward. That's the key thing that needs to be established here.
Okay, I agree, but I want to counter-argue with, I don't think we would have gotten where we are with some of our biggest creators if we were just focusing on more creators.
Which is fair, yeah.
Some of our creators that we have now came around, some of our biggest creators came around at a time where we were focusing more on, let's be more conservative, let's really take time to learn not only the creator but their brand or their niche, the platforms that we can push traffic with. I think we bought ourselves a really important period where we learned a lot about the marketing, and then from which we've been able to replicate that.
Okay, I'm gonna counter it again though, but I also think that every department of this business, whether it's sales and chatting, whether it's marketing, whether it's recruitment, onboarding and admin, I think every department should be full speed ahead. No department should have to stop in order for the other department to catch up. It should be that department's responsibility to always have resource in place. So, for example, if we've got 10 creators that are doing $500,000 a month, let's say that they're already doing $500,000 a month, are you going to turn it down based on the fact that you don't have the resources in place? Or as a business, are we going to find a way to do it because we're not scared? That's my argument.
I don't think you turn. I think that's an extreme example. Obviously,
it's extreme, but it could happen.
Yeah,
like companies get calls all the time saying, "Hey, there's a big contract on the table here. Do you guys want it?"
Yeah.
And companies will be like, "Oh fuck, like we can't do that." But I guarantee some of the biggest risk takers in the world, some entrepreneurs out there will take it and figure it out afterwards. Even if that means they have to stay up for 3 days.
I don't think we should ever turn down $500,000 worth of revenue.
Yeah, obviously we wouldn't.
But for me, that's the extreme example. I'm talking about being more conservative with the 10, 20, 30K.
Which is where it gets complicated because you've then got personalities to be accountable to. So if you take on one creator that's doing 200K, actually, from a resource management perspective, outside of chat, which is not an issue for us, chat's never a problem for us. It's very easy to manage that. You know, allocate a member or two of the team to talk to her all day on social media, on WhatsApp. You allocate a couple of accounts across the social platforms that we're going to be working on that she doesn't already have accounts for. And really, it's relatively easy. Whereas if you take on 10, 20K accounts, same number of revenue, arguably the same chatting allocation, probably end up with more, and a need now for 10 variants of social accounts across multiple platforms each, and lots more phone calls, lots more WhatsApp messaging, different niches, branding, different market research. So the level of resource to revenue ratio stinks.
Yes, it's massively skewed. Yeah.
And that's the flaw in horizontal scaling. But I guess the flip side of that would be if we then lost a 200 creator, shit breaks loose. Whereas if we've lost one of the 10, we're blessed. So I guess this is always going to be something that we can't ever resolve. And that's why I don't actually think there's much of an argument in the whole vertical versus horizontal, because ultimately the answer is both, right? Yeah. So finding the right balance of both is tough, actually.
Yeah, there's definitely very, very strong negatives and positives from both sides. And I don't think any of us here are in favour of one or the other. I don't think we ever would be. I think you'd be...
Maybe there's a time and a place. So I think in the infancies of an agency, taking on as many as you can is probably a better shout, because you're going to have the opportunity to learn different brandings, different platforms, different creators, and different ways of dealing with different creators as well. I also think that it gets your agency off the ground. Ultimately, people ask us all the time, what is the easiest way to grow to 100K a month? Well, fucking hell, sign 100 1K creators. So I think actually in the beginning, just taking on basically everything is the way to go, and then becoming selective.
That was always the best advice that we gave to a lot of different agencies. Like, how do I get to 6 figures? Well, recruit 100 creators.
So really, if we've got a way, like if I was tasked now with saying, what's the best way to scale? Horizontal, then vertically, then both from that point onwards.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I think there are some specific circumstances that, like, if you had let's say your creator was your partner, which, whether we like it or not, for a lot of agencies, that is their first creator, is their boyfriend, their girlfriend, whoever. You can dive into that in terms of you can focus on vertical scale because it's entirely safe. And if you know that person's brand inside out and you know everything about the platforms that are suited to that person, and you can push hundreds of subscribers a day, you will, I think, increase the total revenue of your agency much faster than you would if you had to try and spin 100 plates and manage 100 creators. So even then, there are some very, very specific circumstances where one or the other will work better. It is a case-by-case thing. Another example would be if you had an AI creator. If you were someone that could develop AI creators, there is no creator, is there? It's computer generated, so you don't have a personality, you don't have a person to manage.
And the likelihood of the AI creator deciding that it wants to leave is rounded to a whole number and represented as a percentage, 0.
Literally 0.
So you've got basically no downside to vertical scaling. Actually, no, you probably still got some downsides, because you could lose an account.
You're going to have some downsides.
Yeah, you could get, OFs banned. I mean, again, like for us, it's not a problem. But if we're speaking generally for an agency, that's a problem.
Definitely, yeah. It's all situational. Every single agency will have a different answer, a different correct answer to that question. Is it better to scale horizontally or vertically as an OnlyFans agency?